Greenwood, South Carolina, a peaceful small town shaken by a horrifying case. Davis McClendon, a man with no known enemies, found dead in the dead of night, 50 feet away from his wrecked BMW, blood staining the pavement. Was it a tragic accident or a sinister plot? A love triangle, an oil-leaking truck, and dark secrets slowly unravel. Police trace every drop of oil. The courtroom exposes a storm of jealousy. The public is divided. Some cry for justice, others whisper conspiracy. But only on this channel will we uncover the full truth. From the gripping investigation and fiery courtroom battles to chilling theories no one dares to mention. Welcome to Dark Chronicles, where shadows hide the truth. In the quiet town of Greenwood, South Carolina, where everyone knows everyone, a chilling story unfolded that still haunts the community to this day. It's a tale of love, jealousy, and a night that ended in tragedy. Picture this, May 7th, 2023, just after 1 a.m. The air is still, the streets are dark, and a secluded dead-end road is about to become the stage for a mystery that would grip the town. Davis McClendon, a 46-year-old man with a heart of gold and a smile that could light up a room, was found lifeless, his body sprawled 50 feet from his mangled BMW. Blood stained his face, his shirt was gone, and the scene screamed questions. Was this a simple car accident or something far more sinister? I'm here to take you through every twist, every turn of the hit-and-run homicide that shook Greenwood to its core. Let's rewind 6 months. Davis wasn't just anyone. He was the guy everyone loved. Friends called him the ultimate people person, a devoted father, and a friend to all, even the residents of the retirement home where he worked. Then, on a chilly December night in 2022, at a club decked out in tacky Christmas sweaters, he met Meredith. She was celebrating her 39th birthday. A grammar school teacher fresh out of a rocky 10-year marriage to Bud Ackerman, a local auto body shop owner. Sparks flew instantly. He sat down beside me, and we talked all night, Meredith would later recall. Their chemistry was undeniable, a whirlwind romance that promised hope after heartbreak. For 6 months, they were inseparable, weekend getaways, stolen moments, a love that felt like a fresh start. But not everyone was cheering for this new chapter. Bud Ackerman, Meredith's estranged husband, wasn't ready to let go. Separated for a year, he'd been living in his parents' garage, brooding over the end of his marriage. When he found out about Davis, something snapped. Friends say Davis never had an enemy in the world, but Bud was about to change that. That fateful night, Davis left Meredith at the Key West Club, stepped outside, and made a call that would seal his fate. Minutes later, he told her he was meeting Bud at the intersection of Avid Road and Sawgrass Place. Then silence. Meredith's gut twisted. She grabbed her babysitter, Megan McGovern, and raced to the scene. What they found would haunt them forever. Megan stepped out first. "There's a body," she screamed. Davis lay there, shirtless, his head resting on the asphalt like a pillow, blood pooling around him. His car, a BMW 5 Series, sat wrecked nearby. Airbags out, front tires smashed. How did he end up so far from it? The police arrived, roping off the scene, and what started as a possible traffic accident quickly turned into something darker. This wasn't just a crash. This was a crime, and the hunt for answers was just beginning. The night was still young when Greenwood County Sheriff's deputies swarmed that lonely stretch of road. Flashlights cut through the darkness, illuminating a scene that didn't add up. Davis McClendon's BMW sat crumpled, its driver's side wheel twisted at an odd angle, airbags limp and lifeless. 50 feet away, his body lay motionless, a stark contrast to the vibrant man everyone knew. Investigator Patrick Durkin was one of the first on the scene, his camera clicking as he froze the chaos in time. The damage wasn't normal, he'd later say. The fender wasn't just dented, it was torn back like a can ripped open. Something violent had happened here, and the question burned. What? At first responders thought it was a hit and run. Davis's injuries, crushed bones, blood streaming from his face, Looked like he'd been struck by a vehicle. But where was the other car? The road was dry, no rain to wash away clues, so Durkin zeroed in on the BMW. A phone sat on the passenger seat, airbags deployed, but no skid marks, no signs Davis had crashed himself. Then he saw it, an oil slick glistening under the streetlight, stretching from the wreck into the distance. Tire tracks veered off, footprints scattered nearby. This wasn't an accident, Durkin muttered to himself. Someone had fled, and they'd left a trail. Enter Ronnie Powell, another investigator with a sharp eye. He interviewed Meredith Haney and Megan McGovern, the two women who'd found Davis. Meredith's voice trembled as she pieced it together. He called me from the road, said he was parked, then put me on hold. He never came back. She'd begged Megan to drive her there, fear clawing at her chest. Megan, just a teenager who babysat Meredith's kids, broke down recalling the sight. Davis, lifeless, blood everywhere. Their statements pointed to a timeline. Davis left the club, called Meredith, then met someone. But who? The oil trail became the golden thread. Deputies followed it, winding through Greenwood's quiet streets until it led them straight to a garage, Bud Ackerman's parents' house. There, in the driveway, sat a white Ford F-250 pickup, oil dripping from its undercarriage, a cracked spiderwebbing across the windshield. Bud and his father stood nearby, faces pale as body cameras rolled. "Whose truck?" an officer asked. "Mine," Bud said, voice flat. His 3 kids were inside, his night with them under a custody deal with Meredith. But that truck? It was screaming guilt. Investigators pounced. The oil matched the slick at the scene, tire marks aligned. A theory took shape. Bud, enraged by Meredith's new love, had tracked Davis down. Had he sideswiped the BMW, hitting Davis and dragging him across the road? The evidence was piling up, but questions lingered. Was it planned, or a split-second burst of rage? The sheriff's office wasn't stopping until they knew. And as dawn broke, Greenwood buzzed with whispers. Something terrible had happened, and the truth was clawing its way out. The sun barely peeked over Greenwood as the investigation kicked into high gear. Sheriff's deputies weren't just chasing hunches, they were building a case, brick by brick. Bud Ackerman's Ford F-250 sat in that driveway like a silent confession, oil still pooling beneath it. Investigators swarmed, gloved hands prying into every crevice. The truck's undercarriage was scraped, the front end dented in a way that didn't match a simple fender bender. This was impact, Patrick Durkin noted, pointing to the twisted metal. But they needed more than a hunch. They needed proof. Back at the crime scene, the oil trail wasn't the only clue. Deputies found spatter on a streetlight post, about waist high, like breadcrumbs leading away. Tire tracks showed a sharp turnaround, as if the driver had panicked and bolted. Then there were the footprints, oily smudges in the dirt, heading off into the woods before doubling back. "Someone was here," Ronnie Powell said, tracing the path, "and they didn't stick around." The theory hardened. Davis had been outside his BMW when another vehicle struck him, hurling him 50 feet. But was it an accident or cold-blooded intent? Technology became their ace. Bud's truck wasn't just a hunk of steel, it was a digital witness. Lieutenant Matthew Walk dug into the F-250's infotainment system, a black box tucked behind the dash. "These things track everything," he explained. "Speed, braking, even door movements, it was all there." Data showed Bud driving through Greenwood that night, stopping at the Key West Club at 10:40 p.m., then leaving just before Davis called Meredith. At 1 a.m., the truck was at that intersection, engine idling, then a sudden jolt. "It decelerates fast," Walk said. "Something hit hard." The ignition cut off later at his parents' house. This wasn't random, it was a timeline of rage. Phone records painted a darker picture. Bud had texted Meredith days earlier, furious. "How could you?" She'd brushed it off, but that night he'd called her repeatedly. "Where are you? Who are you with?" he demanded. Security cameras caught him at the club, pacing, asking around. Then Davis called Bud at 12:51 a.m., stepping out back. He said he was meeting him, Meredith recalled, voice shaking. That call set the stage for a deadly rendezvous. Investigators hypothesized Bud had been stalking them, piecing together their night until he found Davis alone. By 6:30 a.m., they had enough. Bud was arrested, charged with murder. Oily footprints in his parents' garage sealed it. His shoes matched the scene. But doubts gnawed. Was it premeditated or a drunken snap? The community reeled, whispers turning to shouts. Some saw Bud as a heartbroken husband pushed too far, others a monster. As deputies hauled him away, one thing was clear: this wasn't over. The evidence was damning, but the why and the how still hung in the air, waiting for a courtroom to unravel. The courtroom in Greenwood was packed, the air thick with tension as the trial of State of South Carolina versus William Bud Ackerman began. It was late 2023, months after that fateful night, and Davis McClendon's death still echoed through the town. Bud sat stone-faced, his once confident swagger replaced by a hollow stare. The prosecution, led by a steely-eyed Matthew Metz, laid it out. This wasn't an accident. It was murder, plain and simple. Bud Ackerman used his truck like a weapon, Metz thundered, driven by jealousy and malice. The defense, headed by Jack Swirling, countered with a shrug. This was a tragedy, not intent. The battle lines were drawn. First up, the prosecution called Megan McGovern, Meredith's babysitter, and the first to see Davis's body. Her voice cracked as she took the stand. He was just lying there, blood everywhere, ears, nose, all over his face. The jury shifted uncomfortably as she recounted that scream-filled moment, her teenage eyes locking onto a nightmare. "I couldn't tell if he was breathing," she whispered. Metz pressed, "Did it look like an accident?" Megan shook her head. "No, he was too far from the car." It was a gut punch, setting the tone. Something deliberate had happened. Then came Meredith Haney, the woman at the heart of it all. She walked in, eyes red but chin up, and the room hushed. "Bud was obsessed," she said, voice steady despite the weight. "He'd been texting me, calling, asking where I was that night." She described Davis leaving the Key West club after midnight. His call minutes later, he said he was meeting Bud. I begged him not to. When she reached the scene, she knew. "Bud did this," she told the jury, pointing at him. "He couldn't stand me moving on." Metz leaned in. "Did he threaten you?" "Not with fists," she replied, "but with words, screaming, cursing. It was terrifying." The courtroom buzzed. The prosecution rolled out the heavy hitters. Evidence. Doorbell camera footage played, time-stamped 1:31 a.m., showing Bud's F-250 roaring past, seconds before a crash echoed through the speakers. Tire squeals followed, then silence. "That's the moment," Metz said, pausing the tape. "That's when Davis died." The truck's infotainment data backed it up. 25 miles per hour, a sudden stop, then a turnaround. "This is Bud's brain on rage," Metz argued, tapping the screen. He knew Davis was there. Photos flashed, the oil trail, the wrecked BMW, Davis's broken body. It was relentless, painting Bud as a man unhinged. Swirling stood, calm and calculated. "No one denies Bud was there," he said, pacing. "But intent, that's where they're wrong." He called Jonathan Nelson, an auto forensics expert. At that speed, in the dark, over a slope, Bud couldn't see Davis until 2 seconds before impact. The jury scribbled notes. Was it enough to sway them? The trial was just heating up, and Greenwood held its breath. The courtroom drama escalated as the trial barreled forward, each side digging in. Prosecutor Matthew Metz wasn't letting up, hammering the jury with Bud Ackerman's unraveling mind. This wasn't a split-second mistake, he argued, voice rising. Bud tracked Davis and Meredith all night. Phone calls, security footage, his truck's data. He wanted confrontation. Metz replayed Bud's texts to Meredith. "How could you?" A jealous plea turned venomous. Then, the clincher. Bud's F-250's infotainment system, a digital diary of doom. At 1:31 a.m., it decelerates hard, Metz said, pointing to graphs. "That's impact. That's Davis." Then he flees, oil leaking all the way home. The jury's eyes widened. Technology didn't lie. Jack Swirling, Bud's defense attorney, fought back with a softer tone. Bud's no saint, but he's no killer, he insisted. He put Bud on the stand, a risky move. Bud's voice was low, almost broken. I loved her, he said of Meredith. I just wanted to talk. He claimed Davis called him, picked the spot, a deserted crossroads. I didn't see him, Bud swore. It was dark, I was pulling up, and then bam! Swirling pressed. Did you mean to hurt him? No, Bud said, shaking his head. I panicked, drove off, I messed up. The jury leaned in. Was it truth or a desperate act? Swirling leaned on forensics. 2.5 seconds, he repeated, citing expert Jonathan Nelson. That's all Bud had to react. No intent there, just tragedy. But Metz fired back in cross-examination. You didn't call 911, he snapped. You hid at your parents' house. Why? Bud stammered. I was scared. Metz smirked. Scared or guilty? The room crackled. Closing argument sealed it. Metz called the truck Bud's weapon, a drive-by with horsepower. Swirling begged for doubt. No malice proven. After a tense half-hour deliberation, the verdict hit guilty. Bud got life. Gasps erupted. Outside, Greenwood exploded. The community split like a fault line. Justice for Davis, some cheered, hailing him a hero who'd shielded Meredith from Bud's wrath. Others grumbled, too fast. Jury rushed it. Social media lit up. Bud's a monster, one post read, racking up likes. But conspiracy theories swirled too. What if Davis set it up? A thread mused, pointing to his missing shirt. Did he want to fight? Local news ran wild, headlines screaming, "Love triangle ends in blood," and truck tells the tale. Radio shows debated, accident or execution? Some whispered Bud's family, well known in town, got off easy with no 911 call fallout. Meredith became a lightning rod. She's why Davis died. Haters spat online, blaming her for flaunting the romance. Supporters rallied. She's a victim too. The trial tapes leaked, fueling amateur sleuths. Oil trails, timestamps, all dissected. Greenwood couldn't let go. Was Bud a heartbroken fool or a calculated killer? The town's pulse raced, and the story wasn't done haunting them yet. As the trial dust settled, let's peel back the layers of how Greenwood County Sheriff's Office cracked this case wide open. It wasn't just luck. It was grit, tech, and a town that couldn't stay quiet. After Bud Ackerman's arrest, investigators didn't rest. They retraced his every move that night, starting with Meredith's phone. He kept calling, she told them, handing over logs, 10 calls, escalating from pleas to rage. Where are you? Who's with you? Bud demanded. Lieutenant Matthew Wack synced those timestamps with security footage. At 10:40 p.m., Bud's F-250 rolled into the Key West Club parking lot, caught on grainy video. He paced, asked around, then peeled out, hunting. The truck's infotainment system was the real game changer. It's like a black box on a plane, Wack explained. Data showed Bud circling Greenwood, stopping near the club, then speeding toward that intersection after Davis's 12:51 a.m. call. At 1:31 a.m., the system logged a jolt, 25 miles per hour to a dead stop. That's when he hit Davis, Wack said, tracing the oil leak back to Bud's parents' garage. Deputies tested the oil, same viscosity, same grime. They even found Bud's shoe prints in the garage, oil-smeared soles matching the scene. He walked away from it, Ronnie Powell noted, shaking his head. But why no 911 call? That gnawed at them. Hypotheses flew. First, accident. Maybe Bud swerved, clipped Davis, panicked. But the distance, 50 feet, killed that idea. You don't fling a body that far by mistake, Durkin argued. Second, rage. Bud, fueled by booze and betrayal, aimed to scare Davis, misjudged and struck. The truck's damage, torn fender, cracked windshield, hinted at force. Third, premeditation. Had Bud planned it, luring Davis there? Phone records showed Davis called Bud, not vice versa, muddying that theory. It's a puzzle, Powell admitted. But the pieces fit one way, Bud's guilty. Greenwood's reaction was a wildfire. Post-verdict, the town square buzzed with arguments. Davis was a saint, cried his friends, Chip Thunderburk and Zach Calhoun, organizing vigils. Bud's a scapegoat, others countered, pointing to the quick jury call. 30 minutes felt flimsy. Online, ex-posts raged. Oil trails too perfect, staged, one user theorized, sparking 500 retweets. Another, Meredith played them both. Radio hosts fanned flames, one claiming, Bud's family pulled strings, no charges for not reporting it. No proof, but it stuck. Media ate it up. Local TV ran reenactments, dramatic zooms on the BMW, slow-mo oil drips. National outlets sniffed a scandal. Small-town love turns deadly. Conspiracy blogs spun wild tales. Davis shirtless meant a setup, or Bud's auto shop ties hit a hitman. Meredith hid from cameras, but her silence fueled gossip. She's free, he's dead. Bud's caged. Who won? A viral post asked. Greenwood wrestled with grief, doubt, and a story that wouldn't die, every whisper adding fuel to the fire. Back in the courtroom, the trial's final moments were a roller coaster, every word a nail in the coffin, or a lifeline. Prosecutor Matthew Metz didn't flinch. Stacking evidence like a house of cards, he dared the defense to topple. He brought back the doorbell footage, Bud's F-250 tearing through at 1:31 a.m., the crash's echo chilling the jury. "Listen to that," Metz said, pausing the tape. "That's no accident. That's intent." He leaned on Meredith's testimony hard. Bud was unhinged, she'd said, recounting his paranoia, screaming fits, even a pillow with a hole cut in it like he was spying. "He couldn't let me go." Metz painted Bud as a ticking bomb, Davis's death the explosion. Jack Swirling countered with a desperate plea. "Bud's not a murderer. He's a man who lost control," he argued. Bud's testimony was their Hail Mary. "I didn't mean it," he repeated, eyes down. "Davis wanted to meet. I pulled up too fast. Dark road, bad timing." Swirling waved off the tech. 2 seconds to react, he stressed, nodding to the forensics expert. "No one plans that." He even spun the shirtless angle. Davis ready to fight, not Bud to kill. But Metz pounced in rebuttal. "You fled, hid, left him to die," he barked. "That's not panic, that's guilt." The jury's faces hardened. The verdict came fast. 30 minutes, guilty, life in prison. Bud's father took the stand at sentencing, voice shaky. "I didn't call 911. I was dazed, it was late," he said, defending their silence. The judge wasn't moved. "A life was lost, and you did nothing," he intoned, slamming the gavel. Meredith exhaled, tears streaking her face. "Davis saved me," she whispered later. "Bud wanted me dead too." The courtroom emptied, but the story lingered, a wound Greenwood couldn't stitch. The aftermath was chaos. Vigils for Davis glowed with candles, his friends calling him a hero, Chip Thunderberg sobbing, "He loved big." But online, X erupted with doubt. "Half-hour verdict? Rigged," one post ranted, 1,000 likes. Conspiracy nuts ran wild. "Shirt off means Davis ambushed Bud, or Meredith's playing victim." Local radio dissected it daily. One host musing, "Bud's family's clout kept them untouchable." No evidence, just noise. TV specials looped the oil trail, the truck, the blood, milking every angle. Ratings soared. Years later, Greenwood's still split. Meredith's a ghost, raising her kids, dodging glares. She's why it happened, some hiss. Others see her as Bud's real target, Davis her shield. The intersection's a grim landmark now. Oil stains faded, but the chill remains. Theories fester. Accident, jealousy, or a deeper plot. The trial answered who, but the why festers. "It's not over," a local mutters, eyeing the road. And maybe it never will be. Davis's death, Bud's cage, Meredith's scars. A story etched in Greenwood's bones, whispering through the pines. As the gavel fell, Greenwood exhaled, but the echoes of Davis McClendon's death didn't fade. The investigation had been meticulous. Oil trails, tire tracks, that damning F-250 data, pinning Bud Ackerman with precision. Sheriff's deputies had chased every lead, from Bud's frantic calls to Meredith to the security cams catching his hunt. "We followed the evidence," Patrick Durkin said, voice firm. "It led to him." The trial sealed it. Metz's relentless evidence, Meredith's raw testimony against Swirling's plea for doubt. Guilty. Life. But the town couldn't agree. "Justice?" Some cheered. "Rushed," others hissed. The community fractured deeper post-verdict. Vigils honored Davis, a hero. Zach Calhoun wept, clutching a photo. Yet X buzzed with venom. "Meredith's the real killer. Pushed Bud too far." One post raged, 2,000 retweets. Conspiracy threads spun wild. Davis planned a showdown, shirt off, fists up. Media fed the frenzy. Reenactments zoomed on the BMW's wreckage, pundits debating Bud's intent. Accident or murder? A headline blared, splitting coffee shop chatter. Bud's family stayed silent, their garage a local ghost story. No charges for not calling 911 fueled whispers of privilege. Meredith vanished into single motherhood, haunted. Davis took the hit for me, she told a friend, eyes distant. That intersection's quiet now, but it hums with memory. Oil stains gone, questions eternal. Was Bud a heartbroken fool, a jealous beast, or something else? Greenwood wrestles still. Too many holes, a local mutters, kicking dirt where Davis fell. The trial gave answers, but not peace. Davis's smile, Bud's cage, Meredith's grief, they're scars on this town, a tale of love twisted into tragedy. And as the wind rustles the pines, it's clear some stories don't end, they linger, daring us to look closer.